I had a job where I worked in the National HIV and STD call center for the under contract for the CDC. And it's interesting because, that's always been a question of mine because how can they say kids don't get it? I mean, a virus, yes, it can have more of an effect on an elderly person, but a virus, it doesn't discriminate like that against age. I mean, a virus is a virus and it's just looking for that host to infect. So why is it that no kids are getting infected with this at all? That has just boggled my mind ever since they started saying young children really aren't at risk for this. Well, how is that not true? I don't understand that, Jim.
I know lots of little kids and they get sick all the time.
Yeah, my kids get sick all the time.
In Spanish, they call it the gripe, and in French, they call it la grippe. Okay, it's the grip. It's got you. It's got you. Oh, I got the fever. Oh, I got the grip. We don't call it the grip in the United States. We call it the flu. Okay, the flu hits young kids. And I call, the kindergarten, the little grade school, I call them germ factories. That's where they pass it around. I got sick when I was young. I didn't get sick a lot. I remember only one time I was out of school for a week. And I never went to the doctor, never got an injection, never got anything. So my system is strong. I will say that in 2017, I got something. It was bronchial infection. I don't know where it came from. And, I'm just going to throw a couple weird items out there. I don't know if, for instance, this one really big scumbag American friend of mine didn't hand me something. I don't know, because he was responsible for a rather significant swindle. The Americans here, half of them are scumbags. The other half are just nice people. And among the nice people, there are a lot of dim bulbs. So the smart, honest types are the minority here among Americans. I call Americans, the gringos, the United States. They got a really funny word for American in Spanish. Estados Unidos is the word for United States. In French, it's États-Unis, very similar. Estados Unidos, States United. So what do they call an American? They call it an estadounidense, a United Stateser. It's kind of United Stateser. You're a United Stateser. Oh, okay. You've got a car, United Stateser. Okay, they make an adjective out of United States. Estados Unidense. Very strange. For Canada, it's very simple. Canadiense, Canadian. But, they don't like the fact that we call Americans Americans, because a Latin American is an American too. A Central American is an American too. A South American is an American too. So why are United States, why are the Estados Unidenses the Americans? Well, that's not right. They don't like that. And I have a joke. They call Canadians gringos sometimes too. And I say, when is a Canadian a gringo? When he's an asshole. When he treats locals with disrespect, he becomes a gringo. Gringo is not a complimentary term. What's the origin of the word gringo? This is fun.
Lay it out to us, Jim.
Okay. We had our military troops, and they would surround like an embassy in Latin America. And our troops were Army Green. And they had a chant, Green go home. Green go home, green go home, green go home, gringo, gringo, green go home. Very interesting. I love word origins. Sometimes they can be fascinating. But anyway, back to this virus.
Latin Americans will take to the streets.
Yeah, and we'll take to our laser guns that we used in Panama. And I talked to a cab driver who knew somebody who was melted into an 18-inch pile of greenish white goo. I asked him how many were killed with this 18-inch goo pile, and he said about 200, 230. So we used our experimental weapons that we did not admit even existed. Okay, there's something I want to get to. Let me lay out a sequence. 2 years ago, the Chinese, who have a favorite source of protein meat in pork, the Chinese experienced swine flu. And it became rather well known that the centers for the swine flu outbreak were the flight paths of British Airways. Don't forget that fact. The swine flu killed 2 years ago, started killing, they had a climax, over 100 million swine. Okay, I call them swine because it's pigs and hogs. I couldn't really tell you the difference. I can tell you the difference between a frog and a toad. Do you know the difference between a frog and a toad, Paul? A
Bumps.
frog is for the water and a toad is for the forest. Okay, I don't know the difference between a pig and a hog, but the Chinese had to kill over 100 million of them. They were all sick, and I'm told that they burned them. I think they should have put them in pits, buried them. They might have done both, but I'm hearing that they did a lot of burning. If you burn a sick pig, what does your air quality do?
Oh, diminishes, obviously.
Diminishes horribly. You think it's maybe filled with bacteria and virus and all kinds of mean, nasty stuff? I think so. If you burn any human body, you get bacteria in the air. Okay, I am of the opinion that many of these cases are tuberculosis and pneumonia. They're calling it all the virus. There's a fellow named John Rappaport, and he's got a rather defiant website with a daily blurb, a daily essay, and he's saying, of course it's the virus. Blah, 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 blah. Sure, it's the virus. We got this new, it's the virus. Blah, 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 blah. It's the virus. Blame everything on the virus. Are they testing anything, or are they just saying it's the virus? They got a dead person. It costs money to test, and the test kits are not available readily. What's the conclusion? They died of the virus. I don't buy this. I'm not saying that there are no deaths from the virus, but gee, there were 20,000 flu deaths in the United States last year. Did they call that a pandemic and set up quarantine centers? I think the quarantine centers might have been the schools, because that's where a lot of people get sick. They go to classes, they go to their high school, they go to their grade school, they go to university. There's a little gathering. You go to a lecture hall, you got 100 people together, they breathe the same air, and that's how you get the sicknesses. So I've got this online office. I don't mix a whole lot, but I've noticed myself, if I go to grab a meal in a food court, I grab the meal and I go home. I don't grab the meal and sit around and, look at all the locals. And we have a saying, it's not clean, but I had a friend, and we'd go and we'd have lunch and we'd check out the pretty girls. Yeah, they call it, verculo, look at butt, verculo. Yeah, okay, that was my buddy, my buddy, and he's gone his separate way. He's a little embarrassed because his business got really messed up, and he doesn't want to meet with me and say, Jim, my income is down 70%. What do I do? I don't know. You got to just deal with it. But I'm not mingling as much. I don't go to the movie theater as much, but that's a little bit different because I've noticed that they don't have English offerings as much. It used to be that half the movies at the theaters here were in English with Spanish subtitles. Now it's about 20%. And after they imposed a universal income tax on this country, the gringos started going home. Gringo home, gringo home. Well, the gringos went home. And now there's something like, I don't know, several thousand fewer gringos in Costa Rica. And the main concentration is in the capital here in Costa Rica. They got a big area called Escazú in the western suburbs, and it's dominated by Americans. I got a couple friends there, one in particular that I go to Thanksgiving dinner for. He always invites me, and he feels sorry for me. Jim, you all alone for Thanksgiving? And I said, well, except for a couple lady friends. But he said, yeah, well, come on over at noon. Come early. We'll have fun. So I get to meet some of his gringo friends. We use the word gringo loosely here among the Americans, and it's not intended as an insult. When the locals use it, it's not always, but it's sometimes an insult. He's an Americano. They call us Americanos. And they understand that it's, there's Latino Americano, there's Sudamericano, there's Centro Americano. Anyway, I use the word gringo loosely because it's a lot easier than saying an American from the United States. No, America. Well, what kind of America? Well, okay, what kind of America? It's the American hemisphere, for God's sake. Now we call it United States of America, which is a clumsy name for a country. We don't say USAians. Anyway, it's kind of weird. Los Angeles got its own problem. They have to call themselves angels. Angelinos is someone from Los Angeles. Well, gosh, what's an angel called? Well, Angel. How about a little angel? Angelino. Okay, so person from Los Angeles is a little angel. I mean, come on. It gets weird. So we call ourselves gringos here. And I call my buddy, a Canadian guy, I call him a gringo too. And he said, I'm not a gringo. I said, yeah, when you're an asshole, you're a gringo. And he said, well, I'm not an asshole often. I said, more than you might think. You know, we have a lot of fun. A lot of fun. The gringos stick together, but I've come to avoid a bunch of gringos because I think a lot of them are scumbags. They come here because they can do swindles against other Americans and not get prosecuted. I've never heard of any legal action taken against an American who swindled another American. And I've heard about 20 or 30 different swindles, not one consequence. And I've got the receiving end of a couple. In addition to the, you know, poor construction and title fraud and all that stuff. But I'd like to know, okay, there's something called mycobacteria. I'd like to know how many cases of dead people or very sick people, intensive care people, are really dealing with pneumonia, which is from mycobacteria. Now, Ben Fulford claims that drones have dropped liquids on Italy that contain the virus. Now, Ben Fulford, he's out there. I'll never say that he's all wet. I'll say that he's out there, and some of what he says makes a lot of sense. Some of it don't really know, and some of it, oh golly, I kind of doubt that. But if I had to lay out percentages, I'm a math guy, okay? And for people who don't know it, statistics is the science of doing testing laid upon probability models, which is all math. I had one client write to me recently and say, Jim, I didn't know you knew math so well. What do you think probability and statistics is? Well, I thought statistics, you just know how to calculate things well. No, I know the statistical distributions and the mathematical elements behind them all. But anyway, there I did again. I lost my train of thought.
You're talking about dropping liquid over Italy.
Yeah, okay, and Ben Fulford and my percentages. I would say that 60% of what Ben Fulford says is rock solid. I would say 30% of it needs to be examined more thoroughly, and 10% of it is a bit woo-woo. I don't know about that, man. I just don't know about that. But I'm not qualified enough to say that 10% is kooky. Maybe it's an element of our human earthly existence that I'm just not familiar enough about, like Antarctica, which, by the way, had 10,000 ads in Craigslist 3 or 4 years ago for jobs. Huh? Okay, there's something going on there. I don't know. I've got clients who study it. I'm just too busy, okay? But Fulford claims that there's a hoax element to this virus. He claims that it's intermixed with 5G damage to the human body. Let me explain something in probability and statistical testing. If I were to do, like when I was at Staples, we had to be careful at times. Suppose there was a promotion at 10 stores, and they were mostly in the Midwest. And for that weekend, the Midwest had a lot of different storms, rainstorms. So you really couldn't test the effect based on sales data of your promotion. There might have been a newspaper ad or something, promotion. You couldn't really test the newspaper, I'm sorry, the promotion and its effect because you had mixed in the damage from the weather. But let's suppose you did something a little bit more clever when you were designing this promotion. You did it on the East Coast and you did it in the Midwest. The East Coast didn't have the rainstorm, so you could separate that out. But if you just did the Midwest, you'd have a confounding of your promotion with the weather. If you did it on a wider basis, like West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, and South, you have 4 centers, and you could test and measure the rain effect so that you could say you had this positive promotional effect in the Midwest and this damage from the rain, because we have other evidence in the East Coast, the South, and the West that told us the effect of the promotion. And we're going to run with that on a uniform basis because we think the United States is a homogeneous kind of market. Okay, right now we've got a confounding effect with pneumonia, tuberculosis, and the virus, while at the same time we have a lack of adequate testing. And I just heard that the Gilead pharmaceutical company charges $300 per test on the virus, and it costs them $3. 100 to 1 markup. Where's the U.S. government to charge them with antitrust violations, price gouging, and whatever? No, they're part of the privileged fascist corporate element in the United States, the big pharma. Who's on the board for Gilead? The former Secretary of Treasury, Schultz. Okay? It becomes an incestuous group, and that's why they call it fascism. What's the origin of the word fascism, Paul? Now, I didn't know this. I had to learn a couple of years ago. There's a Latin word called facem. I think it's spelled F-A-S-C-E-M. I'm not sure about that. Facem. It's a bundle. It's a bundle of reeds. Like suppose you're cutting down a bunch of reeds in your back 40, and you need to bundle them up so they can get picked up by your waste disposal or your reprocessor, recycle. You put them in bundles. Okay. So what is the bundle in a fascist state? But your energy firms, your bank firms, your network news firms, your big pharma firms, and a few others. Say major military contractor weapons firms, can't leave them out. Okay, so that's your bundle. Okay, there's something going on now with overcharging on test kits and tests that you send to the lab. They're overwhelmed. We're going to have hospitals overwhelmed. I hope that they have the ability to distinguish between the bacteria type diseases of pneumonia and tuberculosis. I'm putting this on the wall, Paul. So far, the evidence is pointing in the other direction, that there are a lot of pneumonia and tuberculosis cases. We have other evidence of confounding with the 5G, like numerous reports of people who have no symptoms of virus infection. They're just falling dead. Okay, that's what would happen if they have suffocation and damage of the lungs from radiation burns and damage to their alveoli, their lung sacs. Okay? I'm hoping my lung sacs are in good shape after the bronchitis, but I think I'm probably a little bit damaged. I do testing. My testing is a real hard bike ride 4 miles that way to a mall where I'm going to go get a nice lunch. And I might check out Victoria's Secrets. And it's got a hill. And how am I doing? I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. I'm sweating. I got a wet back. I don't care. I don't care about a wet back. I don't care about a wet backside either. I come home, I have a shower, clean up, whatever. I think I'm in good shape with my lungs. I don't know. I might get tested. We had our first story. Okay, this is important. We had our first story of a couple in San Jose, Costa Rica, who had the virus. My first question is, are you sure it was the virus? Where's the test kit? I thought they're hard to find. How did they test it? How did they confirm it? Or was it the news network that took an instruction from the US and said, put out this story, and if you don't, we'll cut off some funding? I look to see where the Costa Rican government is dependent on the United States. And I know where it is. It's a currency. I know where it is. So the confounding effect has a couple of different conflicts going on. It's a bacterial-based pneumonia, tuberculosis versus the virus, coronavirus. It's the 5G damage with the coronavirus. I had a doctor client, buddy of mine. He's a client. I've known him for a while. Nice guy. He's in the Pacific Northwest. I said, could you take this pair of photos? One is pneumonia damage. The other is coronavirus damage. It's an x-ray of lungs. Could you pass it by a buddy who's a radiologist, x-ray specialist, to see what he has to say? And he came back in 2 days and said, Jim, here's what my friend Martin said. And here's his quote, it's a paragraph. And that's what I'm going to have in my March hat trick letter. I've got to locate it, but I think I know where to find it. I try to mark things well. It says you have a galaxy, they call it. A galaxy like sparkling. They sparkle on the x-ray. It looks like it's lit up all over the place. It's the damage. They're not normal lung sacs. They're called alveoli. It's a nice question on Trivial Pursuit. I used to be great at Trivial Pursuit. I hardly ever lost. What is in Leonid I. Brezhnev? What does the I stand for? I got it right. I thought, well, he's probably named after Lenin, Ilyich, and I got it right. How'd you know that? I thought maybe it was after Lenin. No idea how your mind works, Jim. I said, well, sometimes neither do I. But I win at Trivial Pursuit. Okay. I want to see this confounding separated. And it will get separated because there's a lot of investigators on the job. I want to see more investigation and trails tracked to see if this was a launched bioweapon. So far, I have very little evidence put before me that this is natural. We've got that there's an HIV splice, and they call it injected. Well, if that's the case, then that's not a natural mutation. Now, the fact that it's mutating after it was constructed and engineered using gene editing devices that are well known now, the fact that it mutated after being engineered does not mean it's naturally occurring. It means it's naturally mutating after unnaturally being constructed. Okay, we had a bogus story that I thought was bogus from the start about a Winnipeg Canadian lab having it stolen, and before you know it, it's off in China. Maybe they opened the door and invited the theft, but then came a different story that it was a University of North Carolina laboratory. Okay, so it's not the Canadians. Oh, you clumsy Canadians. Oh, no. I don't buy the story at all. Those bio labs, level 4, they are extraordinarily safe. Anyone who's seen a movie like Andromeda Strain, I got a funny story. When I was a kid, I was in graduate school. It was summertime. It was hot. It was like 1977. And I thought, I'm going for a bike ride. I'm going to do something strange. I'm just going to barge in on a drive-in movie, sit in the trees, do a doobie, and listen to the soundtrack on Andromeda Strain. That's where I saw Andromeda Strain, a drive-in movie with an altered state. It was a good 4-mile ride on my bike, and at night I rode back. It was near midnight. The streets are empty. I've done a lot of what I call animal rides. I just move fast, take the shirt off, and when I arrive, I got bugs in my hairy chest. It's kind of funny. Jim, you got all kinds of bugs in your chest. Yeah, well, I didn't want to wear a shirt. In Boston, it got hot in June and July. I did a lot of animal rides. But here we are, Andromeda Strain. There's a lot of care. There's a lot of protocol. So, golly, how did it leak out so easily? And why didn't it leak out to Malaysia or Philippines or Australia or Hawaii or Alaska? But it went to a population center in China. Oh, that's because they had another biolab there. Okay, I think I get it. But it just happened to be a 5G rollout center. I do critical thinking, and I'm alarmed at how little is being done out there by the public. Have you thought about that? Well, no, I saw in the news that it was this. How dumb are you? I don't know. Why are you calling me dumb? I call people dumb when they act and think dumb. I had an old college roommate get into an argument with me about 6 months ago. He overcame what was misdiagnosed as leukemia He instead had an extreme immune deficiency problem from depression. He had some personal tragedies in his family, and he got really down low. And Jim, I'm really depressed. I can't get out of this depression. It's been a year. He eventually got sick. We got into an argument. It was over Bernie Sanders, and he's a bit of a a left winger type. He likes Bernie Sanders, and I said I think he's one of the dumbest guys ever to hit the American political bloc. He wants to squeeze $1 trillion of waste out of Medicare and Medicaid and use it for free education. I said, Bill, are you aware how stupid some of this stuff is? And he said, yeah, but Jim, he does a lot of really, really good things. I think he could make that Medicare trim work. I said, do you even know that it's a Rockefeller subsidy? Rockefellers won't tolerate any reduction of Medicare or Medicaid. That's a $1.3 trillion subsidy to the American medical and pharmaceutical industry. When are you going to wake up? And he said to me, Jim, when did you become so snide? This is a friend of 50 years. And we're not going to lose the friendship over my snide behavior. We're going to overcome it. Jim, when did you become so snide? And I said, maybe when I became informed. Why is it you're so poorly informed? Bill, you asked me when I got so snide. I asked you, when did you get so obtuse? Because I didn't want to use the word stupid. I got a good vocabulary. Obtuse. And he said, well, I don't think of myself as obtuse. I read a lot. I said, how much do you not read? How much do you read outside the Wall Street Journal and New York Times? And he said, well, those are my main areas of knowledge that I pick up. I said, okay, do you know anything about the lies they spew? Do you know anything about, their track record? She said, no, I pretty much have faith in them. I said, do you ever fact check? He said, well, sometimes. I said, well, not enough. I said, I think you're obtuse, Bill. You need to wake up. Anyway, we're having this battle, and now you saw all of Biden's competitors back out and support Biden, and now Biden's the front runner and the Vegas favorite. This is going to get funny. I hope Biden pits Hillary as his running mate. I really do. I want to see scrutiny for the billion-dollar fraud in Ukraine by Biden and his son, and I want to see more scrutiny of Hillary on 20 different fronts, including murders. It's going to become a circus, and some people are saying we might not get the election this November if it gets worse. And Ben Fulford has put out the story that there are going to be 3 waves of separate pestilence. I call that pestilence because the next one might be pneumonia or tuberculosis. In the old days, colonial days of the U.S., like 200-300 years ago, they had a name for tuberculosis. They call it consumption. He died of consumption. It's on some gravestones. It's their word for tuberculosis. It just consumed and ate up their lung tissue. They couldn't breathe. They got liquid. They drowned and died of just junk in their lungs. Okay, if we get a second and a third wave, maybe there won't be an election. Maybe it'll be martial law. Maybe Trump knew that there'd be no second term a long time ago, which is a very disturbing thought to ponder. I'm hearing John Kennedy Jr. wants to be Attorney General in the Trump 2 administration. Okay, another thing Ben Fulford puts out, I'm not a big advocate, but what he does is he puts things on the table that it's worthy of thinking, worthy of pondering, worthy of examining, worthy of testing, worthy of making a conclusion one way or another. Apparently, and there are other confirming stories that I've got, China is now claiming that they have many areas of their country under control, that it's really not spreading any further, that they've locked down certain cities, cut down on rail traffic, cut down on flights, airline flights, and it's being contained. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's worthy of examination in a real sense. I hope it's true. I'd like to see if this really is tuberculosis and pneumonia and burned pigs is a big piece of it, and 5G is a big piece of it, then what we really need to worry about is 5G and the cell tower rollouts. I don't see any reports being circulated that formal testing is being done on human effects. But Switzerland did block the rollout. They blocked the continuation of the rollout. And people need to wonder, why did they do that? And I know I may get my facts wrong and the numbers wrong, but I believe that in France there were 200 cows that died, and it was blamed on 5G. And in Belgium there were something like, I don't know, a couple thousand birds that were found dead, and they were radiation. It was radiation burn death. So my fear is that we're in the midst of a 5G rollout that is seeing a few different test centers, and Italy might be one. I'm really curious, what on earth is going on in Iran? I'm really wondering what is going on in Iran. I've got a guess. It's a pure guess that US and NATO drones are dropping liquids with the virus. That's my guess. I don't know anything, but I know that we've been dumping for 10 years heroin. If we dump heroin, if we sanction their banks, if we try to ruin their currency, wouldn't it make, and we do Stuxnet to mess up their nuclear refinement, uranium refinement, plutonium refinement centers, the Stuxnet, wouldn't it make sense that we drop in the virus? I don't know if you saw the movie. It was called Prometheus. It was from about 4 years ago. It had Charlize Theron as one of the stars. It had Guy Pearce. He was on one of the Iron Man. He was a villain in one of the Iron Man. I think the third one. Guy Pearce was the villain. And it was the huge billionaire. He was over 100 years old, like 115 years old. He was in the movie. Had Billy Crudup, who played Prefontaine in the movie. He also played in Billy Crudup played the Dr. Manhattan in The Watchmen, which is a very strange but fun movie. Gorgeous woman in that. Was a fighter. She was a kick fighter. Anyway, I think we're getting to an apex here. I don't know how it's going to turn out. But in Prometheus, the movie, they showed how a planet was approached, and they dropped black liquid. And it was, in the movie, it was a near instant death. In like 10 or 15 minutes, they were dead. This is how virulent agents can be delivered. Raindrops, black rain. Drones can do it. We might have had many, many years of chemtrail droppings. I tried to study what was in chemtrails for a long time. I came to learn, for instance, that a lot of it was benzene, aluminum particles. There are town meetings all over Central and Northern California about the huge rise of Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, and they have done testing of the water. Okay, when you're in the little mountainous areas, you can do very accurate tests of the precipitation coming from the sky, and that is you collect a bunch of snow. And they noticed 10 to 20 times the normal amount of aluminum particulates. And there is zero aluminum in natural rainwater. So it's being spiked in the air. Then I came to learn that they were dropping toxic coal ash. Benzene, by the way, is toxic. Toxic coal ash. And what I've learned in the last 2 years is they're limiting their droppings in chemtrails to transparent substances. And I think there's some poison gases and there are various things. And, you know, there's a lot of talk about nanoparticles. And I haven't even gotten to the triggers for viruses that might be involved. And let's just leave that out. We're running out of time, Paul. I'd like to talk a bit about my website, unless you've got another topic that I could cover briefly.
No, we're going to hold those other topics for the next interview, Jim, because we didn't get into Zimbabwe style hyperinflation. I want to get into that with you next time. We didn't get into gold and silver. I want to get into that with you next time. But definitely spend some time here, Jim, and tell us what people can get when they subscribe to the Hat Trick Letter, and anything else you'd like to add there, Jim, for Golden-Jackass.
Okay, I did touch a little bit on the hyper monetary inflation. I talked about repo and what was behind a lot of the extreme volume. Let me just say very briefly in one sentence, with the damage done to the Asian economies, their currencies went down, which meant gold went up in their currencies. So I call it the Asian vengeance, Asian gold vengeance. We're seeing a gold market breakout in almost every Asian currency, and it's helping the dollar-based gold market. Okay. On my website, I've got a public area. Doesn't cost anything to go there. And the public area is for public articles. I try to do one a month. I used to do one a week when I was in the first several years. And it was a lot of work. I would do interviews and do one a week, a public article, and got involved with a couple dedicated sites that had me do work for them. But the interviews, I try not to do a second interview unless there's a link so that people could see it. And, you provide links and it's all fine. This is not our first, not our second. I think you and I have done about 4 or 5 in the last year or so, maybe more. On the same site is a subscribe button. It's a Hat Trick Letter. It's a single report per month. It's a lot of work. It's a labor of love. I find myself just getting involved in it. The first day is always difficult. Oh my gosh, I got so much to do. It's just mind-boggling. I got all this work to do. I got to sort out all these different things and put them in a chapter. It's a lot of work. But once I get going and once I get sorted into a chapter, man, I move fast. I do 10, 12, 13-hour days, and I enjoy it. And my back does not enjoy it because I'm sitting at the desk. But I have a habit of every 30 or 40 minutes or an hour and a half, I get up and move around. I have not moved around much today, and I'll probably have a sore back by evening. That's how it works. We're not built to sit. We're built to walk, and we're built to lie down. We're built to swim. I'm a good swimmer, which haven't done much lately here. But there's also 2 other buttons in addition to the Hat Trick Letter, which I think is essential now. I mean, you got to sign up. You got to sign up for the newsletter. There's so much out there. I mean, I touch on things, but I've got clients who say, I relied on your YouTubes and your interviews, and I finally signed up after a couple of years because I was curious what else there is. And I thought maybe I'll do it for 6 months, but I've been on for 3 years, and now I'm finally going to send you a contact us message and say, I wish I signed up earlier because there's a lot of information in there. You tie things together, you support your arguments. It's not like you say something and you go off half cocked. You are fully cocked. And I thought, yeah, well, thank you very much. Okay, but there are 2 other buttons in there, Paul, and one is the consult button. And it's been hit a few times. It's for conversation with me for an hour. And I think I'm going to alter it to be 30 minutes, 60 minute, 90 minute. And I'd like people to, consider a larger donation to combine with the consult button. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but if you're thinking of helping me out because you sympathize with the mission I'm on and the hardship that I've had to endure the last 3 solid years, sign up for the consult button and we'll have a conversation, get to know you. And I love getting to know my clients. I make a random phone call every couple months, 3 or 4 months sometimes, just to talk. And it's usually over an hour. With a client in Texas, that was during Christmas. Another client in Atlanta, that was last fall. And it's just fun to touch base with them, see where they're coming from. But I encourage people to hit the consult button to help me out because it's a nice sum that helps in a significant way. But
I can imagine people will get stuff that they do not get on a public interview with that consult button.
Well, the consult button enables me to talk about things that I'm not so willing to talk about on interviews, like the Langlo 7 silos of dollar-based criminal organizations, stuff like that. But one-on-one, you can talk about a lot of different things, and there's things that other people are interested in. I had a fellow from Europe who wanted to talk about just trade items and shipping issues, and Baltic Dry Index, and I was able to help out some with that. But we moved over to gold and silver, which he cared about a lot about. He had some friends who were involved in the supply chain for gold. By that I mean the delivery system within the London gold market. But the donate button is still significant for me, and it, believe it or not, it's used almost multiple times every day, and it's nice. It's been a lifesaver. Let me just describe some of what I'm dealing with, and I'm going to try to keep it brief and try not to be too emotional about it because it's been very difficult for me. 3 years ago, there was a crime scene that hit me. It was internal fraud, internal theft, a lot of different things, insurance, criminals, you name it, trafficking of products across the country lines into Panama, stolen stuff. And I was a 6% owner, and I got hit with over a couple $100,000 in losses having to do with maintenance, old loans that had to be covered that weren't properly collateralized, legal fees, fines, and they lied to us about fines. Long stories, but lost over $250,000 on that. And I was just a 6% owner with about 70, 80 grand invested. So what's the return on investment for that? Minus 300%. But there was some profit along the way, so about minus 200%. Okay, there were other things like falsified titles, 2 different properties, huge costs for that. These have a life of their own. If you discover fraud on your title, you got to clean it up. You got to pay off the loan. You got to get a better title. So even after you pay off the hidden loans that were fraudulently hidden, and it's done with a simple $800 or $1,000 bribe to an attorney who will falsify it. It's like an industry here. It's a cottage industry here. After you clean up all the debts, you've then got to do proper paperwork. So that's another $2,000, $1,500, $2,000. And then you got to hope to get a sale, which is where I am now. One of them took 1.5 years to clean up. Another one took a year. I got friends who naively say to me, Jim, why don't you just get rid of them? What the heck do you think I'm trying to do? It costs money to clean them up, and then it costs money to get the proper paperwork, and then you got to wait and deal with the high mortgage rates here. They got 20-something% mortgage rates here, so a lot of sales fall through because they don't get the funding. Okay, what I've seen now is a shift. It's a 3-part shift. The first was crime scene at the parts business, where I had my 6% ownership, in combination with fraudulent titles. Then it shifted to lousy construction, faulty construction, collapsed roofs, old circuit breaker boxes. They didn't have circuit, they had wires, and a fire. I had one fire. And okay, a lot of different faulty construction. That was like phase 2. What I'm dealing with now is the end of phase 3, and I hope it's the final phase, but I don't really know. It's what I regard to be demonic events. I'll try to be brief here, but when a fellow owes up to $15,000 on accounts receivable, is prepared to meet in 2 hours to pay off over 10 grand of it, and has a fatal car crash and is dead, an hour and a half after calling to say, I'm good for the meeting, it's confirmed, I suspect, not foul play, I suspect external agents. Okay. Then when there's a car accident on an unmarked one-way street and they declare my party liable because in violation on a one-way street, unmarked, the only hint was on one side of the street, all the cars were parked in the same direction. Well, that doesn't define a one-way street. Anyway, it was unmarked, and there was a motorcycle kid in the middle, and he ended up dying. Wrongful death. Oops. $75,000. Okay. You could say, well, just bad luck. You can't say it's on fraud in Costa Rica, which is their national sport. It's not football, soccer. Oh no, don't kid me with football, soccer. It's fraud. It's systemic. I'm dealing with extortion in the immigration office. You'll get your residence card, bring in 3,000 more. You get your residence card, bring in 2,500 more. It just goes on, and it's circular. There's no justice here. So I'm dealing with the side of external agents. Another one was a tree, 50-foot tree, fell on our house. It caused $15,000 in damage. Can you call it lousy construction? No. Can you call it fraud and criminality? No. Do you know anybody who's had a tree fall on his house? I actually had a tree fall in suburban Boston in 1981 and took out part of my back porch. It was covered with insurance. We got a better back porch put in. The damage was only $300. This hit the house and cost 15 grand in damage. 2 rooms, roof, you name it, walls. My God. Okay, so it started with fraud and criminality. It moved to faulty construction. Now it's what I call demonic events, because here's the Lulu. Erupted septic tank. The neighbor died. After we had to do about 15 grand in cleanup on our side, we had to do about 40 grand in rebuilding a good portion of the neighbor's house, and then his wife died. This is the 3rd death. This was declared wrongful death. And what's the loss? Another $85,000 since Christmas. Let's just say it ruined my Christmas. I didn't really go anywhere. I managed to move from one bowl game to the next, and on the weekends it was the playoffs or the professional ranks. I made some good meals for myself. I did some exercise, and I decided, you're damn right I'm depressed. You're damn right I wept in my pillow a few times, but I'm going to eat well. I'm going to exercise well, and I'm fighting back a broken voice here. I'm going to get through this. But what it did was it wrecked all the donations from last autumn. It wiped me out. I'm dealing with the last portion of this. 85 grand is not easy to overcome, but that's what I'm dealing with. And I'm going to do a final wave, I don't know, maybe next to final, appealing to my clients to do a consult button and have a little conversation that's optional, because it's a quicker route to put it in my hands. It's hard to describe all that. But anyway, I'm dealing with a lot, and it seems to be a climax. But here's the wrinkle, Paul. We came to learn after the death of the neighbor, we just did a little more work to figure out what is going on here. And we learned that for the last year or more, a Satanist has been targeting me and my lady. It's a woman who knew my lady when she was a waitress at a sports bar. She was jealous of my lady. I don't like using the names, because my lady, me too, would give her earrings, would give her attention, would buy her a drink after she was done with her hours. And this other woman was jealous, vicious, and a Satanist. So several months ago, we didn't hire, enlisted the help of a mutual woman friend to act as a spy. And this witch, satanic witch, so we're told after the fact, had candles, pentagrams, wine mixed with animal blood, dirge music, and photos of my lady on the wall. And the spy, we call her the spy, I don't really know her name. She said at least twice a week, she targeted my lady and me. It was ruin her life, ruin her health, ruin her finances, and ruin her love. And we've had tremendous strain in our relationship, and the witch is dead. She had an Eastern European and Indian Satanist maestra, a woman who we're told had a few different disciples. I don't even know what to call them. Proteges, disciples, students, and the witch is dead. She died of a very painful kidney failure cancer. And when I heard that she entered the hospital in December, I did this. I said, oh, good. I hope she dies. And a few people said to me, Jim, that's kind of cruel and cold. And I said, what I'm dealing with is cruel and cold. And if she's behind some of the Satanist element, the demonic events, the demonic influence, then the sooner she's in the ground, the better. So I would pray that God not, I had a sick prayer, Paul. I used to say, let her take this witch and give her a painful death by fire. Because that's what they all work off, fire, brimstone, Lucifer. But I came to learn from a Christian pastor, a buddy of mine. He became a friend. I solicited him for pastoral duties, and he became a friend. And we're going to have a meal soon. I've been delaying it. He told me, pray that God can justify this woman. Don't pray that she die in a fire. Pray that according to God's judgment, that she gets what is deserved, essentially. Get the proper consequence for her actions. And she got kidney cancer and death. And I'm told that for 3 weeks she was in grueling pain and kept asking for morphine. They gave her a little more and never enough, and she was in constant pain. Now she's dead, and true to form, she had a cremation done. And her urn, her jar is buried. And I don't even want to know. I don't want to know what cemetery. I just want to know that she's gone, and maybe her demons are no longer interested in my life. That's what I'm dealing with, Paul. I'm dealing with a satanic element from the last couple of years, which I'm sure a lot of different Christian followers understand. But what I'm learning regarding my followers is they come from two camps, a very spiritually strong Christian type or just spiritual. And the other is they like my work. And I'm asking both of you, appreciate what I've discovered with this satanic theme, because it has been brutal. I'm talking about over 400K in costs. Hard to come by. 80 grand since Christmas. We still got 10, 12, 14 left. Got to deal with it every week. I'm going to be soliciting more heavy-duty benefactor donors, and it's not easy to receive it because I'm not in my home country. And, PayPal can claim that they've got all these advanced techniques and channels, but the fact is they don't. So that's why I'm advocating people go to the consult button and have a conversation with me as long as you want. And the few that I've had so far, they've all gone over. Interesting person from Western Europe, interesting person from Colorado, interesting person from Switzerland. They've got their unique questions, they got their unique interests, and I like getting to know them. So this is a fun job. I'm working off an inbox switchboard, and I'm very well informed. And some people say, Jim, don't you get a lot of junk messages? And I say, well, not really, no. People don't send me junk because they know that I don't care about it. They know that I might identify it as junk rather readily. I've gotten a little bit of junk. I got some very unusual information come my way, like very high energy areas with metallic deposits, which seem to promote, don't take this the wrong way, Bigfoot type, Sasquatch, like 8-foot types that abduct Boy Scouts in the Pacific Northwest. It is real. And here's a fact that was told to me by a Colorado native. who had ties with a friend of his growing marijuana in Northern California. All across Colorado and Northern California, there are missing persons posters. And you could say that it's people growing marijuana and the competitors are knocking them off, but you also might think that there's some creatures out there who are abducting. I don't know. I just get a lot of weird information. And I've got one particular fellow in Texas who said, Jim, I have seen it. And I don't want to be anywhere near it again because it's terrifying. And I said, you're talking about the guy with the size 18 shoe and 8 foot tall? And he said, kinda, yeah. They leave tracks. And they come out at night. And they all live near the high energy areas of mountains where they're known to be metal deposits. It's very interesting stuff. Okay, I get other people who know about Antarctica, and I listen to it, but I'm on a switchboard here, which means I'm getting a lot of information about this virus, a lot of information about the bacteria-based illnesses, a lot of information about shortages of test kits, a lot of information about gold and silver shortages. There's huge demand going on right now in gold and silver. They're going to have a hard time to prevent what we're starting to call a palladium or rhodium event. A move to 2,500 quickly is up 5-fold quickly. That's what I think could happen. I'm not going to say soon, but we need more breakdown from the control devices, from the buildings where the derivative devices are operating. And they're very well oiled and very well constructed. But, when you got a global boycott, Paul, against the dollar and the treasury bond, what you get is isolation of a different kind. It's not like where they would say, well, we don't want the U.S. ambassador to come for a powwow in Europe. Now that's an isolation. We don't want the U.S. president to attend the Organization of American States. Obama was pretty much ignored. We're going to get a different type of isolation. It's going to be an investment isolation. We're not going to support the U.S. Treasury bond. That's what they're starting to do now, which means that we're going to be left to our own devices. We're going to be left to what Greenspan claimed to be our great wonder of the world, financial engineering. And what it's going to do is going to break the repo. It's going to force infinite QE, recognized to be forever. We're starting to see people call it infinite QE. I started the term a while ago. I also started the term new Scheiss dollar. Scheiss is German for shit. I think we're going to see a falsely backed gold dollar. It might be backed by deep storage gold. It could be backed by some wacky story like the gold in the Grand Canyon is going to back our dollar. Well, I say, when are we going to deliver on the gold in the Grand Canyon to our creditors for our trade deficit? Okay, that's enough. I thank people for going to my site. I'm a bit long-winded. My gosh, we're almost 2 hours here. You're going to have to split this up. But I hope people can help me out during this climax of difficult times. I was with my lady yesterday, and she was almost jumping up and down, gave me a big hug, and I said, what's going on? And she said, we have no new problems for 6 weeks. This has been very, very difficult for me. Very difficult. I don't abandon my friends. I don't abandon my obligations. And I lost my pension from my work years in the 80s and 90s. I lost it. That was to pay a $100,000 court fine for the crime scene when I wasn't involved in the crime, and where they actually said to us, you're an arm's length away from the criminality. There will be no final fine. No, they blew that promise. We got charged with second-degree financial fraud, and big fine, 100 grand. My lady hints to me that it was a bigger fine than what she told, but I don't have any other facts besides that. I hope people can continue to help me out. Hit the consult button, have a conversation with me, hit the donate button, make a donation. I'm working through channels to receive it because it's not easy with PayPal. I will overcome it because I'm a persistent dog. And I'll get through it. I'll get through this nasty mess. I don't know. I have a feeling that this area might not get much in the way of the coronavirus. We do have a Chinese community, and they sold all in the up and up. They sold for $2,500 each to 2,000 Chinese merchants to come here, open up some small businesses, buy into the condo market, get a home. And they lifted the real estate market and they helped the economy. But there is a Chinese, they call it Chino Barrio, Barrio Chino, Barrio Chino. I know exactly where it is. And they've got a little arch, it's not a pagoda, but it's like an unusual Asian rooftop structure. And it's an entryway. It's a portal. And you go down, it's a big area, and there's Chinese restaurants and Chinese shops and Chinese, I've been in there, little Chinese herbs. Like I might want some herbs to help me with my lung problem and the bronchitis. I went there to look and I couldn't find what I was looking for. But, we got a Chinese community, and I wonder, do they travel back and forth? We're gonna find out. It might get messy here. I don't think so. But I'm going to load up on vitamin C. There are various things that we're not told about. Silver ionic, not injections, but inhalation. Massive doses of vitamin C. It wards it off. And I've seen a lot of very strange masks, including women's undergarments, and I don't think they work.
It sounds like hopefully, it sounds like the demonic chapter is closing here and you can get some closure and you can move on. Jim, you are very generous with your time. You're very with your writing. You are still writing on a regular basis that you offer for free for the public. So if people want to get more and if people want to pay that generosity back in turn, definitely become a subscriber to the Hat Trick Letter, hit that consult button, hit that donate button, and do anything you can because we need to keep Jim Willie in this fight for us, the good fight for gold and silver. Jim, I'd like to thank you for joining us again on Silver Doctors.
It's a pleasure being on, Paul.